The bullet came so close I heard it slicing through the air, felt its heat skim past my face, and for a second, I swore it was the end. But it wasn't. It hit the seat right next to me, the same seat where Mike used to sit. And by reflex, I looked at that empty spot. His vest was still there, draped over the backrest like he'd be back any minute. But he wouldn't. Not anymore. I froze. Everything slowed down. The gunfire continued, radio screaming, my current partner yelling something I couldn't even hear, because in that moment, nothing made sense. The man who should have been beside me, the one who always had my six, was gone. And that bullet, it would have gone through Mike's chest, or mine. I don't know which would have been worse, losing him, or knowing I was almost next. That's when it hit me. In this job, the line between life and death is as thin as a stray bullet. And sometimes, what decides it is where you sit. My name is Ryan Collins. I'm 38 years old and half my life has been spent inside a patrol car. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, in a neighborhood where you either played football or got cuffed before you turned 18. My dad was a trucker, gone for weeks at a time, and when he was home, he spoke in silence and drank beer like water. My mom? She was a warrior, worked 2 nursing shifts, always said that caring for others is what made us human. Maybe that's why I chose the badge, to protect, to serve, or maybe just to have something bigger than survival to live for. I joined the force at 21, full of guts and no clue. Back then, everything seemed black and white. Good guys, bad guys, right, wrong. But the streets teach you quick that life's lived in the gray. I've lost friends, seen good people do bad things out of desperation, and seen monsters smiling for cameras like they're saints. Every day out there is a test, and the scars you carry aren't always visible. I was never much of a talker. My colleagues say I'm the quiet one, the guy who watches more than he speaks. But Mike was the opposite. Loud, full of jokes, the kind of guy who could make even the captain laugh during the worst shift. He joined the precinct 4 years ago, and by chance, we got partnered up. Over time, we found our rhythm. Coffee at 5 a.m., patrol by 6, talks about football, politics, life. He spoke about his kids like every day with them was a miracle. He'd invite me over for Sunday barbecues to watch the game with the crew, and I always found an excuse. Because deep down, I didn't want to get too close. I'd lost partners before. I'd carried too many coffins, seen too many wives collapse in grief, too many kids asking why. So I made a rule. Don't get attached. Do the job. Go home. Repeat. But Mike, he didn't follow that rule. He broke through with a cheerful good morning, with an extra coffee in hand, with a "we'll be all right after a shift from hell." He believed, really believed, that the badge meant something more, that we could make a difference. And then came that day, the day everything changed. Just another patrol. But Mike wasn't with me. He'd been put on medical leave a week before, messed up his knee in a chase. He was home, on forced rest. I complained, of course. I couldn't stand the rookie they paired me with, fresh out of the academy, full of theory and fear. What I didn't know was that empty seat beside me would become a ghost, and the bullet that nearly hit me would haunt me forever, because just 1 week earlier, it would have hit Mike, or me, and I don't know what's worse, losing him, or living with the what if. Since that day, everything's different. I live with one question that eats away at me. What if it had been him? What if that bullet had flown a week earlier? Would I be carrying his coffin, or would he be carrying mine? The truth is, after all these years in uniform, you learn there's no answer, just silence, and the weight of going on. It was a gray morning, one of those days when the sky feels like it's pressing down on the whole city. August, thick heat, heavy air. I was already on edge before the shift even started. Traffic was hell, sirens in the distance, and that suffocating silence inside the patrol car with the rookie, Miller, still green, fresh from the academy, eyes full of fear and rules, holding the radio like it might explode. Everything about him reminded me of who he wasn't. He wasn't Mike. The way he checked the GPS, the way he gripped the door handle, all of it grated on me. We were patrolling the west side of town, near those abandoned warehouses by the old paper mill, when the call came through. Code 1066. Break-in in progress. Address, 2484 Fremont Street. I recognized it immediately. We'd passed by that place dozens of times. Crumbling warehouse used by the homeless, addicts looking for shelter. But this morning, there was something different in the dispatcher's voice. Tense, tight. The call came from a neighbor who heard gunshots inside the building. Gunshots, and someone screaming. Something about money and betrayal. Miller looked at me, waiting for direction. I just said, "Let's go." Hit the siren, floored the gas. The city blurred past the windows, and my mind kicked into automatic. I mapped the area, visualized entry points, recalled every blind spot in that warehouse. Mike used to say that place was a time bomb. Narrow hallways, busted windows, enough hiding spots for an army. The radio crackled again. More intel, a suspicious vehicle, had been seen leaving the area minutes earlier, but no one got a plate. That was all we had, and that sinking feeling in my gut, something was wrong. This wasn't just another break-in. It was personal, focused. We reached the block and I killed the siren before turning the corner. The neighborhood was too quiet. No one on the streets. No kids playing. Somewhere, a dog barked, but beyond that, silence. Parked the car half a block away. Called in for backup. Dispatch said the closest unit was 10 minutes out. Too long. Far too long with someone armed inside. Miller fidgeted with his vest, asked if we should wait. I said, "Someone's screaming in there, we don't wait." Checked my weapon, chambered around, glanced at the passenger seat, and again I saw Mike's vest, slung over the backrest like he'd just stepped away for a minute. The warehouse door was slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. I signaled for Miller to cover my flank. We moved in, slow and silent. My heart was pounding. Breath, shallow. The air inside smelled of rust, mildew, and something else. Blood, fresh, thick. It clung to the air like a warning. To the left, a pile of broken crates. To the right, a narrow hallway led to a heavy steel door, half open. On the floor, footprints. Someone had run through, left smears in the dust, and darker stains. Blood. Someone was hurt. Someone was desperate. I signaled to Miller again, and we crept toward the door. Every creak, every breath felt deafening. Beyond the door, the warehouse opened into a vast space. Rusted columns held up the sagging roof, and in the back, a metal staircase led to an old office on the mezzanine. That's when I froze. In the far right corner, partially hidden under a filthy tarp, someone had been staying there. An old mattress, wrappers, empty cans. Someone had been living or hiding. I crouched, eyes scanning, senses on edge. On the wall, scribbles, written with charcoal or dirt, jagged and frantic. I read them quickly. No one escapes. Traitor, you will pay. Rage. Obsession. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Then we heard it. Heavy footsteps above. We ran for the stairs. They groaned under our weight, threatening to collapse. At the top, the office was trashed. Broken windows, old papers everywhere, the stench of urine and sweat choking the air. In the corner, a toppled chair. And blood, dripping fresh from the desk onto the floor. I looked up. A shadow darted through the far door, vanishing into the mezzanine. "Police! Stop now!" I shouted. No response, just running. Then, another gunshot. The sound was sharp, close, and the impact was so near, I threw myself to the ground by instinct, rolling behind a stack of boxes. Miller yelled, diving for cover on the opposite side. The bullet struck the wall where we'd been seconds before. And then, silence returned. Heavy, crushing. On the floor, heart racing, breath ragged, I saw it. A bullet hole in the wall, right where Mike used to sit. My throat clenched. 1 week earlier, that bullet would have killed him. And in that moment, with my finger on the trigger and the world spinning, I realized this wasn't just a shootout. This was personal. Someone wanted us here, wanted that shot. And the real question was, who were they waiting for? The door creaked like a warning, a rusted groan that whispered, "You shouldn't be here." But it was too late. We stepped inside. The air was thick, stale, as if time itself had been trapped between those cracked concrete walls. The warehouse had once been part of a paper mill, shut down decades ago. Since then, it had become a shelter for the forgotten, homeless, addicts, or anyone trying to disappear. The floor was littered with debris, shattered glass, rotting wood. Shafts of light pierced through the high slits in the walls, slicing through the darkness like knives. Every step we took echoed like a scream in a graveyard. I moved forward slowly, weapon drawn, finger resting lightly on the trigger. Miller trailed behind, tense as a coiled spring, eyes darting to every shadow. But I could only hear one thing, my own breath, sharp and ragged, bouncing off the walls. Sweat clung to my skin, the Kevlar vest sticking to my back like a second, suffocating skin. The air reeked of rust, mold, and something thicker, sweeter. Blood, fresh. I could smell it. To our left, a collapsed stack of crates. To the right, a narrow hallway led to a half-open steel door. That's when I saw it. Footprints in the dust, scattered and frantic. Someone had run through here, bleeding. I could feel it. I signaled to Miller and moved toward the door. Every movement felt amplified in that oppressive silence. Beyond the door, the warehouse opened into a cavernous space. Rusted beams stretched above us, holding up a roof that looked one storm away from caving in. At the far end, a rusting metal staircase spiraled up to a mezzanine and a small office that overlooked the floor like a decaying throne. Then something caught my eye. In the corner, half covered by a filthy tarp, was a makeshift bed, a stained mattress, discarded wrappers, water bottles, a backpack. Someone had been living here, or hiding. I crouched low, scanning the area. On the nearby wall, jagged writing, smeared charcoal or dirt. Chaotic words like a mind unraveling. No escape. Traitor. Pay what you owe. This wasn't a random break-in. This was obsession. Rage. This was personal. Then we heard them. Heavy footsteps above. We sprinted toward the staircase. It groaned and swayed with our weight, every step threatening to snap. The air grew colder, heavier. The office at the top was destroyed. Shattered windows, scattered papers, yellowed with time. The stench of urine, sweat, and blood thick in my throat. In the corner, an overturned chair, and blood, fresh, dripping from the desk to the floor. I looked up. A shadow darted past the far door, a figure escaping. "Police! Freeze!" I shouted, voice echoing off the metal walls. But there was no answer, only the sound of running feet. And then, a gunshot. The blast was deafening. The shot tore through the air and I hit the ground by instinct, rolling behind a pile of broken cabinets. Miller shouted, diving for cover across from me. The bullet slammed into the wall where we'd been standing just seconds before. Silence followed, dense and electric. Flat on the cold, dirty floor, I saw it. The bullet hole in the wall, right where Mike's seat used to be. My stomach's twisted. If it had been last week, that bullet would have ended him. Or me. My hands tightened around the grip of my weapon, breath shallow, heart racing. That shot, it wasn't random. It wasn't a miss. It was a message. I scanned the floor. Blood trails, movement. And in that moment, crouched in filth, adrenaline surging, I realized this wasn't a break-in. It was a setup, a reckoning. And the bullet wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to remind me that Mike's ghost was still here. And I was next. The echo of the gunshot still hung in the air when I got up from the floor, teeth clenched, senses on high alert. My mind was racing in two directions: find the shooter and figure out why that bullet felt so deliberate. It had hit the exact spot where Mike used to sit, like a signal, a cruel reminder of what had been and what could have been again. I took a deep breath, signaled to Miller, and we moved down the narrow mezzanine corridor. Every step echoed with metallic tension, and the cold steel beneath our boots felt like it was vibrating with danger. My grip on the gun was tight, finger poised, eyes scanning every shadow. Behind a half-open door, movement. The shape of someone trying to escape through the rear exit. "Cover me!" I shouted, kicking the door open hard, sweeping the room with my weapon. It was small, dark, filled with broken shelves and old paperwork. In the corner, a man, thin, dirty, wild-eyed, stared at us, clutching a pistol. His hand shook, but the fury in his eyes was ice cold. Before I could speak, he fired. The shot went wide, hitting the wall to my left. I rolled forward, instinct taking over, shouting, "Drop it! Now!" Miller hesitated, nerves getting the best of him. The suspect bolted, knocking over a shelf, sending debris flying. He stumbled, dropped the gun. I was on him in a second, pinning him to the filthy floor, knee in his back, cuffs out. He fought, swore, spit. "You don't understand! He deserved it! He betrayed me!" he screamed. As I yanked him up, his eyes were glassy, crazed. I wanted answers. Who was he talking about? Why was he here? But there was no time. A noise from below, a muffled scream. We weren't alone. I left Miller to guard the suspect and rushed down the stairs, moving fast but careful. At the far end of the warehouse, a locked metal door vibrated with the sound of someone kicking from inside, crying for help. I kicked it open with all my strength. Inside, in the suffocating darkness, I found a man tied up, bloodied, barely conscious, his face swollen, lips cracked. He's insane. Said he'd kill me for betrayal, the man whispered, voice weak and shaking. I cut the ropes, helped him to his feet, carried him out into the light. He was in shock, trembling. Behind us, the warehouse seemed to close in, every shadow whispering something darker. The paramedics took over. The man would live, but in his eyes, I saw the same thing I felt. Confusion, fear, and something else. Recognition. Back at me, the patrol car. The suspect was still raving, still stuck in whatever hell he had built in his mind. As they loaded him into the cruiser, I caught a final glimpse of his face, and in his eyes, something strange. He looked at me and smiled. A cold, twisted smile. And I knew this wasn't over. Inside the warehouse, something caught my eye. Near the toppled chair where the shot had been fired, a bullet casing. I bent down, picked it up, and on the floor behind it, a small torn piece of paper. My name, written in red ink. That shot wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to speak, to tell me I was being watched, followed, targeted. The suspect wasn't just any man. He knew me. He knew Mike. He knew exactly where to shoot. The bullet hole in the wall wasn't chance. It was deliberate, and it was a warning. This wasn't just an attack. It was the beginning of something, a hunt, and I wasn't the hunter. I was the prey, and worse, I was only just realizing it. As the cruiser pulled away, the suspect still screaming incoherently from the back seat, I stood motionless at the entrance of the warehouse. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the broken pavement, and everything felt unnaturally still. The distant siren faded, but its echo stayed with me, buzzing in my skull like a warning I couldn't ignore. This man, he wasn't just some deranged junkie or squatter. He knew us. Me, Mike. That much was clear. I walked back inside, the warehouse now crawling with forensic teams. Miller hovered nearby, still shaken but trying to keep his composure. I could barely hear him over the pounding in my ears. Blood on the floor, the shattered chair, the bullet hole. It all formed a scene that was more than just evidence. It was personal. "Detective Collins?" One of the techs called me over. "We found this upstairs near the stairwell." He handed me an envelope. Yellowed, stained, my name scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting. Ryan Collins. My heart stopped. I didn't want to open it. I already knew whatever was inside wasn't just meant for me. It was meant to unravel me. But my hands moved anyway, trembling as I tore it open. Inside was a single folded page and a photograph. I opened the page first. One sentence, scrawled in ink. "You took everything from me. Now I'll take you, piece by piece." The photo slipped from the envelope, fluttered to the floor. I bent down, and when I picked it up, everything froze. It was me and Mike, smiling, arms around each. Other in uniform, in the precinct parking lot. A picture from years ago, one he had on his phone, a picture no one else should have. I couldn't breathe. My hands clenched the photo until it crumpled. How did this man get this? Why? I ran back upstairs, heart hammering, retracing steps to where the envelope had been found. In a corner of the mezzanine, tucked behind a rusted beam, I spotted a filthy backpack. Inside, more photos. All of us. Me, Mike, the precinct. Clippings from old case files, news articles, reports, all marked with red ink, circles around names, dates highlighted, patrol schedules, routes. Someone had been following us. I kept digging. At the bottom of the bag, something sharp. A cracked ID badge. Dusty, half broken. But the name hit me like a punch to the gut. Daniel Kruger. I staggered back. I remembered that name. 2 years ago. A warehouse raid. Mike and I led it. Illegal weapons trafficking, heavy resistance. A security guard got shot in the crossfire. Survived. Paralyzed. Claimed he was innocent, just doing his job. Mike didn't buy it. We wrote him up in the report. There was an investigation, but it got buried. No charges. No closure. And now, he was back. Kruger had vanished after the raid. No address, no record. Now he had resurfaced. Obsessed, unhinged, and hunting us. Every photo, every note, every bullet. It all led back to him. The bullet hole, the empty seat. They weren't accidents. They were symbols. Messages. I suddenly remembered something Mike said months before he died. "I don't trust that Kruger guy. He's watching us." I brushed it off then, thought Mike was overthinking. But he wasn't. He knew. And now I knew too. Mike hadn't just been killed on a routine call. Kruger had been stalking us, waiting, planning, and I realized with horror, Mike was only the first. The shot today wasn't a warning. It was a continuation. And I wasn't just looking into the past. I was staring straight into my own future. A future Kruger had already written in blood. I walked back to the patrol car in silence, my mind spinning, the world around me fading into a blur. All I could see was his name, Daniel Kruger, burning in my memory like a brand. A name I had buried long ago, now dragged out of the dark like a corpse refusing to stay in the ground. He had been there all along, hiding in the shadows of my past, waiting for his moment, and now he was back, with a plan. I sat in the driver's seat, gripped the wheel, and stared at the passenger seat, the seat Mike used to fill. His vest still lay draped over the backrest, like he'd come running out any minute, coffee in hand, cracking a joke. But he wouldn't. Not ever again. My fingers brushed the fabric and I felt something snap inside me. A knot tightening in my chest, too tight to breathe. Mike died in an alley during what we thought was a routine stop. A suspect pulled a weapon, shots were fired, and Mike fell. I held him, tried to stop the bleeding, called for backup, screamed for help, but he was already gone, and I blamed myself. Every day, I still do. I was the one who said, "Let's check it out, just one more stop before shift change." If we'd just gone home, he'd be alive. And now, knowing Kruger had been watching us, following us, planning, opened a wound I never let heal. What if that night wasn't random? What if Mike's death wasn't just bad luck? I replayed it in my mind over and over. Could I have stopped it? Did I lead him to that alley? Was I the reason he died? My chest burned with guilt, but underneath it all was something worse. Rage. Pure, blinding rage. I wanted to find Kruger, to make him pay for every second I held Mike's lifeless body in my arms, but that's what scared me. Because I've seen where that path leads. I've watched good cops fall apart chasing vengeance, become something else, something dark, something they swore they'd never be. I didn't want to be that man, but sitting there staring at that bullet hole in the wall, I wasn't sure I had a choice. Miller tried to speak. "You okay?" he asked softly, like he knew the answer but had to try. I nodded, but we both knew it was a lie. How could I explain it? That the man who tried to kill me today had already destroyed me once, and might do it again. I remembered what my mom said the day of Mike's funeral. "You can't save everyone, son, but don't lose your soul trying to be invincible." And right then, I didn't feel human. I felt like a weapon, cold, broken, and ready to be used. But then came the worst thought of all. What if Kruger wasn't done? What if he was coming after more? After my family? After Miller? He wasn't just hunting me. He was dismantling my world, one piece at a time. The war wasn't just out there in the streets. It was inside me, tearing at everything I believed in, and I didn't know if I was still winning or already lost. That night, I didn't go home. I couldn't. I stayed at the precinct long. After everyone else had left, locked inside the records room, buried in old case files and faded reports. The dim fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting long shadows over the stack of papers, but I barely noticed. The only sound was the ceiling fan ticking and my own breath, shallow, tight, like I was breathing underwater. I wasn't looking for evidence anymore. I was searching for something else. Clarity, maybe. Redemption. I read every line of the Kruger case file over and over again. The raid, the shooting, the report Mike and I wrote. I remembered every detail, but now, with different eyes. Back then, we thought we were cleaning up the streets. We had no idea we were planting a seed of hatred in a man who would later return to destroy everything we stood for. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I didn't care. I stared at my reflection in the glass door, pale, exhausted, hollow-eyed. A man who looked more like a ghost than a cop. And I asked myself the one question that really mattered. How far am I willing to go to stop this? And at what point does justice become revenge? Just then, my phone buzzed. A message. No number, anonymous, a video file. I tapped it, and what I saw drained every ounce of blood from my face. My house, nighttime, recorded from a distance, my garage, my car parked out front. The camera moved slowly, creeping closer, and then his voice, Kruger, whispering like a demon. You took everything from me. Now it's my turn. I froze. He had been there, outside my home, watching, stalking, close to my wife, my daughter. My hands shook, my breath caught in my throat. He had crossed a line, and I knew in that instant I had to act. I couldn't wait for warrants, for backup, for bureaucracy. Kruger was inside my life now, inside my head, and if I didn't stop him, if I didn't end it, he would keep coming. For me, for them. I pulled out the last known address tied to Kruger, an old, condemned shelter on the outskirts of town. It had been abandoned for years, labeled no-go by patrol units. Too dangerous, too unstable, perfect for someone like him to hide. I went straight to the captain, demanded a team to move in. He refused. There's not enough evidence, he said. You're too close to this. You're compromised. He didn't get it. This wasn't about procedure anymore. This was war. I left the precinct with one thing in mind. Finish it. I grabbed my gear, jumped into my unmarked car, and hit the road. No sirens, no radio chatter. Just me, the night, and the rage boiling in my chest. Miller called me. I didn't answer. He called again. Finally, I picked up. Where are you going? He asked. His voice was calm, but I could hear the fear. I told him the truth. To end this, tonight. Silence. Then he said, you go alone and he wins. Let me help. I hesitated, then nodded to myself. Maybe I didn't have to carry this alone anymore. As I sped through the sleeping city, one thought repeated in my head. This ends now. Not because I was fearless, not because I wanted revenge, but because I couldn't live one more day with Kruger's shadow hanging over me or my family. From that moment on, I wasn't hunting a criminal. I was hunting a ghost, one that had haunted me for too long, and I was ready to face him. I drove to that abandoned shelter like a man on the edge of a cliff, knowing one wrong move meant falling, but unable to stop. Every turn of the wheel, every streetlight I passed felt like a countdown. I wasn't chasing Kruger anymore. I was chasing the end of this hunt, of the fear, maybe of myself. The city was asleep, but I wasn't alone. The rage inside me was loud, blinding. I couldn't get that video out of my head. Kruger's voice whispering outside my home, outside my daughter's room. That image had etched itself into my soul like a scar that would never fade. The shelter appeared like a ghost in the fog. Crumbling walls, broken windows, graffiti covering every surface. It looked like it had been forgotten by the world, the perfect place for a man like Kruger to hide and plot. I parked the car down the block, moving on foot. Every step was deliberate, my weapon ready, heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. I slipped through a collapsed section of fence and crept around the back. The place smelled of mold, piss, and something worse. The sour tang of cigarette smoke freshly exhaled. He was close. I could feel him in the air like a sickness. Inside, the shelter was pure decay. Trash everywhere, old mattresses, shattered glass, and in the center of the room, a fire pit still smoldering. Smoke drifted upward, curling around something placed deliberately on a table nearby. A photograph. I moved closer, gun raised. My breath caught. It was my daughter, taken recently, too recently. On the back, more writing. She doesn't deserve what I lived, but you do. My knees nearly buckled. I gripped the table, trying to steady the storm inside me. He had been here, inside my world, watching us. My fear turned to fury, but I couldn't act on it. Not now. Then a sound. Footsteps upstairs, fast, heavy. I ran toward the noise, heart slamming, ready to end this. I climbed the stairs, kicked open the first door, empty. The next, empty. Then I heard it. Another door slamming. I sprinted, burst in. Nothing, except a wall covered in images. Me, Mike, my family, newspaper clippings, patrol logs. It was a shrine. No, a tomb. A sick memorial to his obsession. And in the center, scrawled in red across the wall, "You will feel what I felt." My radio crackled. It was the captain. "Collins, where the hell are you? We just got a call. Threat made against your home. Units en route." Time stopped. My home, my wife, my daughter. I ran. I didn't think, just ran. I tore through the streets like a madman, sirens off, tires screeching. My house appeared ahead, patrol cars in the driveway, red and blue lights flashing. My wife on the porch, clutching our daughter, both, crying, terrified. I rushed out, pulled them into my arms. They were safe, but the front door was broken open. I stepped inside, every instinct screaming, every muscle ready to kill, but he was gone. The house was ransacked, overturned furniture, shattered glass. And on the living room wall, written in red paint, "You're too late." It was a game. He was playing me, and I was chasing his shadow while he got closer and closer. That night, the department pulled me from the case. Official, suspension, weapon and badge surrendered. I was too close, compromised, a liability. They didn't get it. Kruger didn't want to kill me, not yet. He wanted to tear me down, bit by bit, and it was working. I stood in my daughter's room that night watching her sleep and made a vow. I wouldn't fall. I wouldn't become him, but I would stop him, no matter the cost. Because now it wasn't about me. It was about everyone I loved, and I wasn't going to let him take anything else. They took my badge, my gun, and whatever pride I had left. I felt like a hollow version of the man I used to be, a cop without authority, a father consumed by fear, a husband teetering on the edge of breaking. Even at home, I wasn't really there. I sat in silence, staring at the walls, seeing only the images Kruger left burned into my mind. My wife, Emily, could see me slipping away, and she wasn't about to let me. That night, after I put our daughter to bed, Emily came out to the porch. The city outside was quiet, but inside me there was a storm. She took my hand, grounding me with that unshakable strength I always underestimated. "You think you've lost, Ryan," she said softly, but with steel in her voice. "You think you failed Mike, and now you're failing us. But you don't see that you're already losing us, all on your own." The words hit me harder than any bullet ever could. I tried to argue, to talk about duty, about protecting them, about ending this nightmare before Kruger struck again, but she didn't let me finish. "This isn't justice anymore," she said, eyes locked on mine. "This is self-destruction. You're letting him win. You're letting him turn you into the very thing you hate." Her words tore through me. I looked away, but she held my face with both hands, forcing me to see her, to feel the truth in her voice. "Mike was your brother. He knew the risks. And yes, you lost him, but he would never want to see you like this. You think he'd let his death drag you down like an anchor? No. He'd tell you to stand up. He'd be here for us. So you need to come back, Ryan. Come back to us. Be the man he believed you were." My eyes burned, and I felt the weight of every memory, every mistake crashing over me. For months, I had held it all in. The guilt, the anger, the loss. And in that moment, it all broke. I cried. I cried for Mike, for the life we'd had, for the life I'd almost lost in my obsession. Emily wiped my tears, then handed me something. The photo Kruger had left at the shelter. But on the back, she pointed out something I hadn't noticed. Faint numbers written in the corner. A code? A coordinate? We didn't know. But it was a lead, and for the first time in weeks, I felt clarity. I didn't need rage. I needed focus. I called Miller, told him everything. No lies, no half-truths. I expected him to hesitate, but instead he said, "If we're going to finish this, we do it the right way. For Mike." It was the first time I'd heard conviction in his voice. Maybe he was growing into the partner I needed, or maybe I was finally seeing him for who he was. That night, I made a choice. Not to burn everything down in the name of vengeance, but to fight smart, to take back control. I wasn't going to let Kruger write the ending to this story. Not for me, not for my family. And for the first time since Mike died, I felt something that almost scared me. Hope. That night, I sat on the floor of my daughter's room while she slept, her soft breathing the only sound in the house. The glow of her nightlight cast slow-moving shadows on the wall, and for the first time in weeks, I felt still, not calm, but still. Like something inside me had stopped spinning long enough for me to see clearly. I looked around at her drawings, her stuffed animals, the tiny shoes by the door, and I realized this is what I'd almost lost. Not from a bullet, from myself. That photo Kruger left, the one of her, it was meant to terrorize me, and for a while it worked. But now, looking at her sleeping so peacefully, I saw it for what it truly was. A test, a question. How far would I go? How much of myself would I destroy to stop a monster like him? For weeks I had been trying to fight Kruger on his terms, but I finally saw the truth. This wasn't about being stronger, faster, or more ruthless. It was about not letting him rewrite who I am. I remembered something Mike said to me a long time ago. We'd just gotten back from a call where a young officer froze under pressure. Everyone had been hard on the kid, but Mike pulled me aside and said, "We all break. What matters is what you do with the pieces." Back then, I nodded and moved on. Now, I understood. Kruger had broken me, piece by piece, my trust, my balance, my identity. And now it was on me to put those pieces back together. Not to be the same man I was before, but to become something better, more honest, more grounded, not just a badge and a gun, a husband, a father, a survivor. The next morning, I returned to the precinct. No badge, no uniform, just me. I walked into the captain's office and told him everything. The threats, the files, the message behind the photo. I showed him the numbers written on the back, coordinates, we thought, and how they traced back to a closed-off section of the same industrial site where it all began. The place where Kruger lost everything. The place where I'd taken it from him. The captain listened. He didn't speak for a while. Then he asked one question. "Are you doing this for revenge?" And I answered truthfully, "No. I'm doing it so he doesn't take anything else." He nodded, gave the green light. We had a location. We had a team. This time it would be by the book. No more solo crusades. I wasn't going in as a man seeking justice or retribution. I was going in as someone who had made peace with his ghosts and was ready to finally put them to rest. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. No badge on my chest. No gun on my hip. Just me. And for the first time in a long time, I liked the man I saw. The old warehouse stood at the edge of the city, forgotten by time, half swallowed by weeds and rust. We arrived just before sunset. The sky burned orange, casting a haunted glow over the cracked concrete and broken windows. It felt like the end, not just of the day, but of something deeper, something heavier. This time, I wasn't alone. Miller was with me, steadier, sharper than before. Behind us, 2 unmarked cars, a quiet tactical team, every move prepped and coordinated. No sirens, no rush. We were done playing Kruger's game. We were here to finish it. I stood outside the main door, heart steady for the first time in a long while. This wasn't about fury anymore. It wasn't about guilt. It was about closure, one way or another. The warehouse door creaked open with a groan that echoed through the empty lot. We stepped inside. The place was cold, still, thick with dust and the scent of mildew. Shadows stretched across the walls, and every footstep seemed to carry the weight of the past. In the center of the warehouse, illuminated by the last rays of sunlight pouring through broken windows, sat a single chair, and in it, Kruger. He didn't flinch, didn't run. He was waiting for us, as if he'd known we'd come all along. His clothes were filthy, darkened by time and madness. His eyes, sharp, hollow, alive with something twisted. He looked right at me. "Welcome back, officer. Collins. Or should I say, Ryan?" The way he said my name made my stomach turn. Miller raised his weapon. I held out my hand. "Not yet." "You're done, Kruger," I said, stepping closer. "You think this ends with handcuffs?" He muttered, smiling. "This ends when you see the truth. That you and I, we're the same." I kept moving forward, calm, controlled. "We're not." He slowly raised his hands, deliberate, calculated. Behind him, I saw a table. On it, photos, recordings, papers, a war room of obsession. Everything he'd used to follow me, Mike, my family, my world. I looked into his eyes, and for a moment, I didn't see a monster. I saw a man broken by choices, by grief, by his own story. A man who let pain define him, until that was all he had left. Miller moved in with the cuffs. Kruger didn't resist, didn't blink, just whispered, "You'll never erase me. I live in your shadow now." We led him outside. He didn't fight. He smiled, like he had still won something. But I knew better. I looked at the rising moon, at the calm in my chest, and I understood. He hadn't taken me. He tried. God, he tried. But I was still standing. Back at the station, the report was filed clean. Suspect apprehended without incident. Numerous threats, psychological profiling pending, all procedural, all precise. But the real story wasn't in the report. It was in the bullet hole still etched in my mind, in the empty seat beside me, in the wife I still held each night and the daughter who still called me daddy in the mornings. The operation was over. The threat was contained, and I was alive. A few days later, I sat inside the same patrol car where everything nearly ended, and in a way, where everything began again. The seat beside me was still empty. The bullet hole in the side panel hadn't been patched. I asked them to leave it, not as a scar, but as a reminder, not of death, but of life, of the fragile line that separates what we have from what we lose. Kruger is now in a high-security psychiatric facility. He'll face trial. He'll face the law. But the real judgment, the one that mattered most, didn't happen in court. It happened inside me, in the quiet, in the dark, in the nights I spent questioning everything I'd ever believed. This case didn't teach me about tactics or procedure. It taught me about survival. Because surviving isn't just about dodging the bullet. It's about what you carry after, the pain, the guilt, the fear, and still choosing to live. Kruger wanted to infect me with his hatred, to make me just like him. And for a while, I almost let him. I let the rage grow roots. I let the grief turn to poison. I pushed everyone away. I thought pain made me strong, but I learned something else. The strongest thing you can do is come back. Come back from the silence, from the anger, from the edge. Come back to the people who still need you, who still love you, who never stopped believing in who you are beneath the uniform. Mike was my brother in arms, my partner, my compass in the storm. I couldn't save him, but in the end, he saved me. Because it was his memory, his stubborn hope, that pulled me back when I was ready to disappear. The job goes on. The calls keep coming. The danger never sleeps. But now, I carry it differently. I no longer wear the badge to chase ghosts. I wear it to protect what matters. My family, my city, myself. We all carry a bullet with our name on it, real or metaphorical. Some of us take the hit. Some of us dodge it. But the truth is, survival isn't luck. It's a decision. Every single day, Today, I choose to live, and tomorrow, I'll choose it again. Because the pain never leaves, but you learn to walk with it without letting it lead. Subscribe to the channel now if you want to hear more emotional real-life stories from police officers, and drop a comment below. Which part of this story hit you the hardest? It could be a memory, a dilemma, a single line, anything. I read every single comment, and I promise you, it's in your voices that this mission continues. I'll see you in the next episode.